Hey everyone, I'm Vanessa. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, I am a style and lifestyle blogger from San Francisco. I recently started a series about chronic urticaria, and today I'm going to be sharing how I deal with it emotionally or mentally. If you missed the other videos on this subject, I do recommend going back and watching them in case you have any further questions or need any more clarification. In addition to sharing how I deal with chronic urticaria mentally and emotionally, I'm also going to be answering a couple questions surrounding the subject that you submitted to me on Instagram. Without further ado, let's get into it. For the first part of today's video, I want to talk about how I dealt with chronic urticaria mentally and emotionally in the beginning. I've been dealing with this autoimmune issue for about 2 years now, but in the beginning it was the absolute worst. I still deal with flare-ups, but they're not nearly as intense and they don't last as long as they did in the beginning. I mentioned in my first video that my first flare-up lasted for several weeks and it got progressively worse. So in the beginning, I felt very embarrassed and ashamed because my face was completely mangled for almost an entire month, and even when that flare-up went down, I continued to have flare-ups consistently, probably every other week at least, and they would last for quite some time. So it was really discouraging. I was a full-time college student at that time, and I was embarrassed to be seen by my classmates, and I tried to do as much work at home as I could while keeping communication open with my teachers that I was going through something and I just had to focus on my health, which included a lot of resting and going to the doctors to try and get some answers. My first flare-up started in the summertime, and by the holidays I was still having issues. So I had these big campaigns that I had to complete, and I couldn't even meet deadlines because my face was so messed up for so long, and it really influenced the way that I felt about my competence in completing work in my field, because the majority of my work revolves around creating content and being on a camera, but it's really hard to be on camera when you're dealing with a really severe flare-up, especially when it affects your face so severely. It was really hard for me to explain to other people what was going on with my body because I didn't have a lot of answers myself, and it's something that I had never experienced before. Even though things were really rough in the beginning, inside and outside, the more that time has progressed and the more that I've become aware of my triggers and how to avoid them and how to manage them, things have continued to improve in every aspect of my life. For the second part of today's video, I want to talk about the lifestyle changes that I've made in order to improve my emotional and mental health when it comes to dealing with chronic urticaria. Something that was really hard for me to accept in the beginning was the fact that I had to be okay with resting and focusing on what was in front of me in terms of the health issues I was dealing with. It was really hard because around the times that my flare-ups were starting, I was a senior in college and I was so ready to begin flourishing in my career, and I just felt like my flare-ups were really holding me back. So when it came to being forced to slow down and rest, I had a lot of guilt, and I had to learn to accept to be okay with pausing and resting so that my body could heal. And a big part of that helped me improve my emotional and mental health was not feeling guilty for resting and just accepting that this was only temporary, but it was also necessary. In addition to rest and accepting the pause that my body craves during a flare-up, I've also learned the importance of keeping your adrenals down. So if there's anything that you can avoid stress-wise or anxiety-wise, it's really important that you do avoid it or deal with it in the calmest manner possible, because any added stress that raises your adrenaline can make your flare-ups worse. I discovered that early on, and that's a big reason why rest is so important, and disconnecting from the world so that you can truly rest, limiting your screen time, your television time, all of that, and just simply resting and being still is really important to keeping your insides calm and helping your flare-ups not get worse unnecessarily. It's really a challenge to be completely still in the hustle and bustle of what we experience in this life, but when it comes to dealing with health issues, I honestly feel like it's one of the best things you can do, whether you're dealing with chronic urticaria or something else. Another tip that I have that sort of piggyback off of rest and keeping your adrenals low is to still be active when you can physically in terms of some form of exercise, but keep it chill. So I wouldn't recommend going on a run or doing any high intensity workouts because that is known to raise your adrenals. But if you're able to do a walk, get some sunshine, some vitamin D, I feel like that is so imperative to, you know, breaking away from laying down, which is also very important, but also stretching your legs and just leaving the house. Another idea is you could do a yoga stretch or a low impact workout that doesn't involve any jumping or anything high intensity, but that can still get your blood pumping and your mood levels up. For the last part of today's video, I'm going to be answering 2 questions that I received via Instagram stories. The first is, I have CIU2 a year now. Did you ever feel afraid or gain fear toward food and items you used? I would say yes, definitely. I gained a lot of fear towards food items and everyday items like beauty products or household cleaning products or fragrances, just a whole variety of things, because with chronic urticaria, I deal with both food triggers and chemical triggers. So I gained a lot of fear about what would set off a really bad reaction. But something that has been able to help me conquer that fear is learning what a lot of my triggers are. The only downside is that sometimes I discover new allergies or new kind of reactions that were different from other things that I've experienced. The second question is somewhat similar. It's actually from someone different, but they tie together really nicely, and it is how to gain confidence, because certainly you'd have to avoid some foods and makeup products. So I did gain a fear, as I mentioned in the first question, and I feel like this question sort of asks, how do you gain confidence after you discover that there's an issue going on with your body that gives you a physical reaction? The way that I gain confidence after having to avoid food and makeup products is that I know I'm doing what's best for my body. So a lot of people who have food restrictions can deal with embarrassment and having to explain to others why they have certain restrictions, whether it's an allergy or a religious reason or just preferences that they have based on their beliefs. A lot of people can get uncomfortable from that, so I feel like that's kind of where this question derives from, is how do you overcome that? And for me is that I'm so firm in my beliefs about what is best for my body when it comes to my diet choices, and I know that I'm doing what works well for me, and I'm firm in my decisions. So even though sometimes when people pry and ask questions, it can become uncomfortable, I know that at the end of the day, I'm doing what's best for myself, and that gives me confidence to continue down the path that I am, and to reassure myself that I'm doing what's right for my body based off of my years of experience of cutting out certain food products. When it comes to makeup products, it's actually something that I feel has been a little bit more difficult, because I do like trying new hair and beauty products, but I do run a high risk of having a reaction to a variety of products, whether they're considered vegan or clean. That doesn't really necessarily help me out. So I'm constantly having to do patch testing when trying new makeup or hair products to ensure that I won't get a reaction on my face. I feel like gaining confidence for my choices in my diet and my food is easier for me than with makeup and beauty products. As a style, beauty, and lifestyle blogger, it's my job to maintain relationships with brands long term, and a big part of that is continuously trying new products. I also recently started an IGTV series for weekly makeup looks, and I'm curious, you know, just as someone who enjoys playing with makeup, I want to try new products, I want to try new brands, but I have to be really careful because it's really easy for my skin to react when I'm trying a new product. So something that I do is patch testing. I do it on my wrist or on my neck, and I'll keep track of what products I put where. But sometimes it does hinder my confidence in fulfilling partnerships or collaborations of sorts, because I get scared that what if the product doesn't work well for me, or what if the product makes my hair look amazing but gives my skin a reaction. It can be really frustrating, and it can definitely impede on my confidence. So that's something that I'm actually currently working on and constantly working on. And I try to be really open and honest about it on stories, because whenever I try a new product, I have to be sure that it works for my body on multiple levels, and sharing my experience with it makes it a little bit easier. I did receive some other questions, but today I really wanted to focus on the ones that were submitted on the emotional and mental aspects of dealing with chronic urticaria. So if you submitted a question but didn't see it answered, I may have answered it on a past video. And if I haven't, but it wasn't really pertaining to the subject, I will definitely consider it for future subjects that I do in this series. That is all for today's video. I hope that you found it informative and helpful, and that if you're experiencing chronic urticaria or any kind of health issue, that these tips can help you out in your journey. Our emotional and mental health is so important in every aspect of our life, and it's something that I really strive to stay in tune with for my own sake. So I hope that these tips can bring you some peace and keep your sanity on even keel. That is all for today's video. If you enjoyed it, please do give it a thumbs up, and I will talk to you next time.